Okay, I'm going to just go ahead and make that assumption that you can hear me because everything's been going well up to this point. So yes, as Aidan said, this is the third webinar in the Get Ready, Get Hired webinar series. This one is relationship building, also known as networking. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we do move forward, I would like to take this moment to acknowledge the fact that that I do have the honor and privilege to work, study, and live in a region south of the Fraser River, which overlaps with the unceded traditional and ancestral lands of the Kwantlen, Musqueam, Katsi, Semiahmoo, Tawasin, Kikite, and Quequitlem peoples. Just a brief overview. I suspect most of you are returning. For those of you that are new, welcome. I'm really happy that you're here. A quick overview. Now this series, as well as the Get Ready, Get Hired job and volunteer fair that's happening next week, is brought to you by your Career Development Center. And so what we do offer you, it's a whole bunch of stuff, whole bunch of goodies. So we have one-on-one coaching. You can book those appointments through Advisor Connect. We also do resume reviews, so you can upload your resume through our website in order to get your resume critiqued. We also have exclusive job postings that are listed on Career Connection for on and off campus opportunities. This is, of course, where you also sign up for workshops. So you're very familiar with Career Connection, but do be proactive on it. We also offer virtual drop-ins on Tuesdays from 2 till 3 p.m. and on Thursdays from 10 a.m. till 12 p.m. And you can find the link on our website as well. And then, of course, your CDC does also host job and career fairs, and the most recent one is coming up next week. So tomorrow we have our final webinar in our series, and this one is helping you navigate the virtual job fair. So please do come and join me, excuse me, for that one. Same place, same time, 12 till 1 p.m. And then on Friday, we have Resumania. So you can have your resume critiqued in real time, and that's for drop-in between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. And there's more information on our website about that. This, of course, leads us all to the grand event, which is next week. It's the Get Ready, Get Hired virtual job and volunteer fair that I hope you're all going to be attending. And that's on Wednesday, September 22nd from 12 till 3. So hopefully we will see you there. Okay, so anytime I talk about networking, I always feel the need to say this to people because I think it's really, really important that people understand this. First of all, the term networking is very intimidating and a lot of people don't like it. I don't like it. Basically, you know, that's what it is. It's relationship building. It's chatting with people, and it can be done in a formal or an informal setting. You can see my background here. They're having a cup of coffee. If people know how they can help you, and they usually will. So I want you to remember that if people know how they can help you and they usually will. So it's up to you to determine what your goals are and to articulate that in a way that will allow people to help you with your networking endeavors. So here's what we'll be covering today, what networking is and why it matters, where the jobs are. So again, kind of the advertising leading up to this said, you know, most jobs are not advertised, and it's true. Of course, there are a lot of jobs that are advertised, but most fillings are done through a network. Most you know, candidates that do get offered the job, or even get to that point of the interview, it's through networking. It's through connecting with people and engaging with people. So the question is, you know, where are the jobs if they're not posted? So we'll be covering that as well. Putting it into practice. How do I network? So we'll talk about some techniques and some tips that you can use in order to expand your network and do it in a way where you're comfortable. One of those ways is information meetings, right? And so that's basically questions that you ask people about a particular job or industry. And I will also include the most important question to ask ever when you're in an information meeting. I'm going to cover very briefly introverted and extroverted networking because I always get asked about this. So I thought, okay, well, I need to put a slide in about it. And then social media. We're going to cover this relatively briefly as well. So let's get moving. Okay, so what is networking? Well, it's the opportunity to exchange ideas. It's to learn about certain things, learn about services. Back, a few years back when I was looking for daycares, I was using my network for that, and it all fell together because of my community. Whether you're looking for a good bakery shop or your next opportunity, generally it's done through networking, right? So it's the opportunity to exchange ideas, to learn, to understand about a certain career or industry. It'll help you decide perhaps what courses to take. So here we get a deeper knowledge of a company or, again, a career, an industry, helps us find employment, progress in our career so it doesn't stop when we find the job, right? Networking really does help us in our own career management. And of course, to find your fit. And I think that last point is particularly crucial, and we'll cover that in a little bit. So why it matters? Well, it's better when it's fun. So, you have the opportunity basically, and if you've had a career coaching session with me, I talk about the two ways that people look for employment. And so you can either do it kind of in a reactive way. And by that, I mean, you find a job posting, you think, yeah, I can do that. I'm qualified to do that. And you put together maybe a resume and then you react to that job posting. Or, and that's hard to do, by the way. It's really hard to stand out when you're doing it that way, because that's how most job seekers do it as well. The other way is a more proactive approach. So where you kind of take a step back and you don't pay so much attention to the job postings that are out there, but you pay a little bit more attention to you and who you are and what your values are and the skills that you have and the type of company you would like to work for and work with. So it's better when it's fun. It's more rewarding when you actually are targeting a company based on the fact that they meet X, Y, and Z criteria for you, right? And so by networking and doing a little bit of research that way, you're able to uncover companies that meet those needs, and then you target them based on that, not so much on the job posting. The more we practice, it does get better, right? So the more we practice and nurture these professional relationships, the easier it does become. So at this point, right, if you think, networking, if your comfort zone is here, I challenge you to step outside of that just a notch up and then a notch above that, and it will become easier with time, right? So we're kind of just going to take some baby steps there to get you out there in the world of networking or connecting or building relationships. And why does it matter? Because that's where job search success happens. That's where job search success happens. It's through networking and connecting. So here it is, more than 70%, this is from LinkedIn, more than 70% of professionals get hired at companies where they already have a connection. So remember that, more than 70% of professionals get hired at companies where they already have a connection. And this might be a LinkedIn stat, but it actually coincides with all the information I've ever received in my years of being in career development. Okay, so where are the jobs, right? If I know that you're saying, Chantal, if you're telling us not to look at job postings, then yeah, look at job postings. Just don't look at it, all the time. But you're saying, well, where else can I look for employment? So one thing to consider right now, and you might have heard this, the job market's really strong, right? Employers, in fact, are having a really hard time recruiting the right candidate. But that being said, the job market is also overcrowded with job seekers. So the question is, how can you stand out from the crowd, right? So if you've read any of my articles that I've written, I've mentioned this probably at least 2 times in 2 different articles. Find out where the job seekers are and then don't go there, right? So we've already established the fact that most job seekers are going to be using places like Indeed or even LinkedIn, job search, job postings. These are job postings that are available to the public, and they're very, very competitive, and it's really challenging to stand out there. So that's where most job seekers are. So we want to kind of avoid that, right? And then what we want to do is find out how employers hire or prefer to hire, and then go there, right? So here's a little diagram I put together here. So on the left-hand side, you see job seeker search methods. So how most job seekers are looking for employment. And you see the wide part of that triangle there, it's with an online job search, right? So most job seekers go online, and I guarantee if I ask most of you, how are you currently doing your job search? If you are in an active job search, you're probably going to tell me, well, I primarily spend my time online looking on Indeed or some other job search websites. But if I then go around the group of people and say, well, how did you find your last position, whether it was volunteer or paid employment? And it never fails. When I have an in-person group, I do ask this question, and it never, ever fails, where most people will say, oh, yeah, I found it through online. The reality is, and the reality that I've been seeing, is that most people found their last position, whether it was paid or unpaid, through a network, through a connection, or by targeting a company directly. So actually reaching out to a company directly and letting them know that you're interested, that they're interested in working for them or volunteering for them. And that usually has a little bit more success. So it honestly, it's never failed for me. Phew, because I was trying to prove my point, and I always did, luckily. So, and then if you go up the triangle, up to the little bitty part, the point, you mathematicians out there will call it something other than a point, but it's a point to me. Network, right? So a small amount of job seekers are actually using their network to find employment, right? Even though we know that for the most part, success is found, by using our network, by using people we know or people that we kind of know. We don't have to have a strong relationship with them. Now let's head over to the other side. So this is how employers prefer to hire. It's their hiring preference. Yes, they will post jobs. That does go without saying. They absolutely will post jobs on sites like Indeed and so forth. But where they tend to find success, the successful candidate, is within their network. So we have the wide part of the triangle. Again, you're going to call it something probably more official. I'm going to call it the wide part of the triangle. That's where most employers find their employees. It's through their network. It's through their network. And then as you scroll up, the last kind of option for them is, okay, let's have a look at those applicants that submitted through the portal, right? So there's a reason why a lot of companies out there have hiring initiatives for their current staff, right? And some of you might be familiar with this, where you're working for a company and the company has some kind of initiative, some kind of reward if an employee helps them or refers one of their own contacts to a job opening and that person gets hired, that employee gets some kind of reward. And some of them are just astronomical, depending on the company. Like sometimes it can be a trip somewhere. Usually it's some kind of monetary value. But there's a reason why they do that, because the network is important, right? The network is important because if a current employee refers someone they know to this job opening, it's because they believe there's that fit there, right? There is that fit. And remember yesterday during the interview workshop, we spoke about the three things, the purpose of an interview, right? Is, does the person want to work there? Do they have the right skills? And are they a fit? Those are the three things that an employer is looking for. So if that's coming from your own employee, that speaks millions. So here you go. I hope that diagram helped demonstrate that for you. Okay, so putting it into practice. Chantal, how do I network? How do I possibly network? Well, the first thing is you want to do is you want to develop a goal for yourself. So what is your actual goal? Of course, the end goal is to find employment, but your goal when it comes to networking really ought to be to find employment with the right company, right? So when you're doing your networking and getting out there and meeting with people, it isn't asking them for a job, it's asking them for information, perhaps about an industry, to decide if you actually want to go into that industry, or it might be to establish, if what kind of company you actually want to work for. So develop a goal for yourself and then have a plan. Okay, so have a plan in terms of how can I expand my network, so that I get a better understanding for this industry or for this company. So part of that is identifying who is in your current network and where those gaps are, right? So if you don't know people that are working in certain lines of work, well, that's your gap. So you're going to want to work in ways to expand that aspect of your network, right? And that could include things like joining associations, or volunteering, or whatever it might be. Use your current connections, use your family, use your friends. Okay, I'm saying use, that's not a nice word, but you know what I mean. Your peers, fellow students, instructors, the student union, right? There's use what you have around you, use those resources, and then expand your network, right? So ask for people to connect, reach out and connect with people on LinkedIn, join groups, join associations so that you can expand that network, and then keep that network going. So we'll talk about some of those strategies in just a minute. So being strategic. So how to network continued here. So opportunity is knocking. First of all, you're at KPU or you've been at KPU, so you could be alumni. Take advantage of some of the resources that are on campus. I finish off this workshop actually with a slide about some resources within the KPU community, but be places. So by that I mean join clubs, join associations, do temp jobs, take the contract job. The more people you know, the better, right? So kind of get yourself out there, and then that kind of brings me to my next point. Once you're there, work it. Like, connect with people, just get to know who it is you're working with. And it's not always with the intention of them finding you employment. It's with the intention of building relationships with people that are around you. So take advantage of that contract position. Take advantage of, being active in that club or joining an association or volunteering. Get to know the people that are around you. Give back. So one thing that, I always find with people that are in a formal networking setting, and what I mean by that is perhaps there's an actual event that's being, say, hosted by the Alumni Association or by the Vancouver Board of Trade or by a Chamber of Commerce, and it's a formal networking event, so it can be intimidating for some people. But rather than think of it as you going there to get help from people, go there and be open-minded. You could be quite amazed at how much of a resource you can be for other people. So make sure that you listen. And as an extrovert, I'm speaking to you extroverts out there, listen more, right? Less talking sometimes, and that'll really help you to engage and build relationships with people that you meet. So go in there thinking, well, what can I do? How can I help them? Listen, and you might even be able to make a connection for them as well. Okay, so going back to the steps that I mentioned earlier, a few slides back, about how to actually network. One of them was, identify your network and then identify where the gaps in your network are. So the people that you would like to connect with that you're not currently connected with, right? So one strategy for this is information meetings. Right? So information meetings, and basically what is it? So an information meeting, it's informal, it's or it can be formal, but it's generally, more of a chat kind of conversation. It's a brief meeting with someone who's either working within an industry or within a company, or a career, and they provide you with information basically about that career, company, or industry. What's the purpose? Well, number one, it's to expand your network, right? So maybe you've identified that there is a gap there. You've done all you can to establish if someone within your network knows someone working in this industry or in this career, and maybe they don't. So you might have reached out to them, or they might have connected you with someone where you then meet up with them to get information. So it works really well to expand your network and to help you research a particular company, industry, or career by speaking directly to someone who's in it, right? So always going to the source. Where? Well, particularly if you're interested in a specific company, I always suggest that you ask them to meet at that company that they're working at. Now, of course, due to COVID, that might not be an option, and so it might just be a virtual meeting. But hey, it's still a really great opportunity to get a lot of great information and to meet someone that's working within that company. But if you can, if you're invited in to go to the company, do it. You get an idea for a few things here, right? You'll get an idea for how long it took you to get to that company. Do people seem relatively happy when you walk in the doors, right? Are you greeted nicely? Do you have a good vibe? Do you have a good feeling about this place? And then from there, this person might even offer to introduce you around. Hey, you never know, right? So of course, career professionals, potential mentors, right? So if you're in a place in your career where you're just kind of starting out and you'd like to look into mentorships, you might be able to reach out to people perhaps through LinkedIn and ask them if there's a possibility that they or someone they know is willing to be a mentor. Relatives, why not, right? Family and friends and so forth, professional associations. There's really an endless list of people that you can do information meetings with. When? Well, you can do it again anytime. So whether it's for career exploration, whether it's for job search, again, one of the questions you always want to avoid is, in an information meeting is, are you hiring, or, will you hire me, right? This is an information meeting. It's not a job. It's not a job interview. It also helps perhaps to do information meetings when you're trying to determine your major as well, right? Industry insight can really help to confirm or adjust your direction. So it's important to keep an open mind. I'm going to give you an example. When I first started in this industry a few years ago, I knew that I wanted to work as a career advisor. I knew that I wanted to work within the career development industry. But my big question was, well, with which company do I want to work with? Because there were quite a few, and there still are quite a few companies that are offering these services. And at the time I was volunteering. I was volunteering for a great organization, and but they weren't hiring. And so I needed to get out there and kind of expand my network and so forth. But one of the things that I was really thinking when I was doing my information meetings was, I really just want someone to hire me, right? I was going out there with that intention, when really what I ought to have been focused more on was the fit between me and a company, because there were so many. So I requested an information meeting with a particular career development company, organization, and prior to our meeting, this organization had received a contract to deliver employment services to people that had just been released from prison, right? So it was a special kind of population that I would have been working with. And so I went and I had an information meeting with the manager of this center. And by this point, the program had been expanded. So they weren't just working with that kind of population. They were working with anyone, but primarily it was still that population. So I went into this information meeting. And again, in my head, I'm thinking, I just want them to love me and offer me a job right there on the spot. When really I should have been focused more so on, is this the right fit for me? So I went in, I was dressed, very professionally, and I was very new to the industry. And the manager of this center had a baseball hat on, ripped jeans, and he was pretty relaxed in our meeting. And he was just kind of firing questions at me to get to know me a little bit more. And I was asking him questions, and I'm sitting up and I'm being very proper. And at the end, he said to me, where did you say you were volunteering again? And I said, oh, yes, I'm volunteering over at ABC Corporation. And he looked at me with his pen in his hand and he said, you should stay there. Now, at first I was kind of taken aback, but then I thought about it afterwards and I thought, yeah, he's right. He is right. I went in there with the intention of looking for employment. I really did. I wanted a job. I had a student loan to pay. But he knew very well what I was up to, but he also knows what's right for him and his clients and his organization. And I wasn't the right fit, but I was so focused on a job that I forgot about the fact that an information meeting is really just about establishing if this is the right fit. So initially, while I might have been taken aback, I completely got it. And he was so honest and upfront with me that I really, really respected him. It kind of made me shake my head and go, whoa, yeah, you need to refocus what your intention is here. So industry insight can help you to confirm or adjust your target. And it really did that for me. This is an absolute true story. Okay, so again, you want to identify what is your goal with an information meeting, right? Is it part of your job search? So to expand your network, to identify a type of company that you would like to work with so that when they do have an opening or even not, you can just eventually let them know, based on the research that I've done, I think this would be a good fit. Is it to get a mentor, to find a mentor, someone that can help you in your career journey? Is it to get industry or company info or training information? What is your goal, right? And then from there, you want to set a plan for yourself. So do a little bit more research, do a little bit of digging, because if you know someone who knows someone, then they can make that connection for you. But it might just turn into a cold call. It might just mean that you need to reach out to someone without anyone connecting you and requesting an information meeting while telling them why, right? And then schedule the meeting and then meet. So here's an example of something you might consider writing in an email or saying in a phone call. I always recommend starting with an email or starting with a message, maybe on LinkedIn, and then perhaps following up with a phone call. But people usually prefer to have a kind of a prompt with an email. So hello, my name is Chantal and I'm a KPU student. I'm choosing my major soon and I'm considering a career in this or this. Of course, you would list which. I noticed your extensive experience on LinkedIn and would like to ask you a few questions about this industry. Could we schedule a brief meeting of about 15 to 20 minutes so that I can ask you a few questions about your career? So it's very clear. I've introduced who I am and why I'm contacting them, and I've been very clear about what it is my intentions are. So then when you do go in for that 15 to 20 minutes, you do really want to pay attention to the clock or to your phone that is muted. Pay attention to the time to honor the fact that they gave you 15 to 20 minutes. In my experience, I've certainly seen people be very, very warm and welcoming. And, if the information meeting is going well, you can then say, oh, I'm noticing that we're just coming up on the 15-minute mark. I just have one or two more questions. They might say to you, you know what, I have another 10 minutes if that works for you, because people love talking about their own career path. They like talking about their career journey and maybe advising. Again, if people know how they can help you, and they usually will, right? So remember that. So here's a few questions you might consider asking in an information meeting. Can you tell me about the career path that led you here? One thing you'll find with this response is it's very rarely linear. It's very rarely, well, I graduated from school, I got my first job in this, and then I got my second job in this. It's usually and then, this happened, so that kind of led me on a different path. And it's really interesting to hear people's career pathways. What would you say is the most challenging thing about entering this field? That's a good one. I know employers put a lot of stress on fit. What are the main soft skills someone should have to be successful in this industry or this role? And what are other careers that are related to this kind of work? So that kind of goes with that first question there, right? So you might think, well, this isn't quite the right fit for me, but I still really think the skills overlap a lot. So maybe there's something a little bit similar. So here's just a few questions. There's certainly tons and tons. You can ask about, career, you can ask about work-life balance, you can ask about courses that they recommend you take, volunteer opportunities, so forth, but you don't necessarily want to ask them, are you hiring right now? I mean, you can. You can ask them, do you see the company growing? Do you see there being, opportunities coming out in the near future? You can certainly ask that. Finally, and most importantly, I think, you want to finish off with this question, because it's really about expanding that network and developing warm leads. So maybe this person was someone that you had reached out to separately on LinkedIn. You don't know anyone in common, but they work at a company that you're really interested in meeting about, or they work in a position and you just haven't found any connection. So you reached out via just a cold call or a cold email. Asking this question will make any additional meetings or potential meetings warm leads, or any potential contacts warm leads. So is there someone else you suggest I reach out to for more information about this role or this company or this industry? And then follow up with, would you mind if I reached out to them directly with your name? Or could you do an introduction for me over LinkedIn? Right? So always finish off with that question, because it's about expanding. It's about expanding that network. HR is not the one for you, right? So this is particularly important. Unless you're actually researching a career in human resources, do not contact the human resources department for information about the accountants that they hire for, or the graphic designers that they hire for. If you want to learn about a job in graphic design, contact a graphic designer. If you want to learn about working for a particular company, ask someone who's working in a similar role that you might be interested in, who's working for that particular company. Okay, so HR will probably just, they're the gatekeepers, so they will probably just say to you, any information you need, you can find it on our site, or, whatever it might be. So I would suggest that you go directly to the source when you're looking for this information. Okay, so here we have, just very briefly, I'm going to cover this, some introverted tips and some extroverted tips. So one thing to remember when we're talking about introversion or extroversion is that it's not about being shy, or, for someone who has a preference for extroversion, it's not about being particularly social. I do have a preference for extroversion, but I definitely get tired when I'm over connecting with people. So that's what it comes down to. It's more or less how you're energized, right? How you kind of rejuvenate at the end of a day. So if you do have a preference for introversion and you're thinking, Chantel's talking about this networking thing, I should kind of get on that. Just think about a few things, consider a few things. So if you're actually going to an in-person networking event, and it's very possible you could be, maybe consider doing kind of nothing the night before, right? So just kind of energize yourself by doing what energizes you. So it might just be hanging out with close friends, hanging out with your family, just, chilling, relaxing, reading a book, whatever it might be. Prep yourself for it kind of emotionally and energy-wise, by just doing kind of nothing or whatever it is that energizes you the night before. Set a time limit for yourself. So if you're actually going to an in-person networking event, force or encourage yourself to stay there for at least 30 minutes or even 20 minutes, right? So just kind of have that timer set. If you can stay beyond that, fantastic, but challenge yourself to stay there for at least 30 minutes, right? Have a wing person. Now, this is a little bit risky for me to suggest, because it might mean that you just stick with that wing person. So the wing person is someone who you go to these events with, and they kind of help you feel a little bit more comfortable at the event. But again, challenge yourself not to stick with your wing person, and really get out there and try to chat with people. You don't have to work the room, but challenge yourself, maybe give yourself a number 3. 3 is a good number, right? They use that in the world of design. So 3 people that you go and you chat with during that event. And then, if it meets within your time limit, then you leave, right? Then you give yourself permission to leave. What's your goal? So ask yourself and clarify that with yourself as you're entering this networking event. What is your goal in going to that particular networking event? And just kind of reminding you of that might make things a little bit easier. And then finally, and there's tons of tips that I could give you here, but finally, go to the right event. So there's tons of different formats for networking events out there. So some of them, it might be more of like a mingling thing. You might go there and maybe grab a drink and kind of walk around and chat with people. That might be really intimidating for someone who has a preference for introversion. So you might want to consider going to an event that has a sit down component to it. So you kind of sit at a table, perhaps enjoying a meal or listening to an initial presentation, but you are surrounded by other people at that table as well. Excuse me. So choose your event, right? Now, my tip for extroverted people that have a preference for extroversion, and not to be silly here, but it's kind of the one thing: actively listen. Right. So what happens when you have a preference for extroversion is you're listening to the information and you are already developing and forming sentences in your head that you want to say. I know this because that's my preference is extroversion. So actively listening means listening to the entire story and picking up bits and pieces with that you can then build on and expand on. Right. It also means pausing before you speak or before you respond. So, some of these things might not be an issue. Some of the introverted tips over on the left-hand side might not be a preference for someone with, might not be an issue for someone with a preference for extroversion. But hopefully, you'll also find some of those tips to be useful as well. Okay, so again, just briefly, I'm going to touch on the topic of social media. Because according to this survey by JobVite, so JobVite is a software developer and they develop applicant tracking system software, and they have fantastic surveys and information and resources that I'm often referring to. So one thing that I picked up from one of their recent surveys is that, and I'm not surprised by this at all, 25% of recruiters are investing in recruitment efforts on Instagram. This might not be surprising to you. It's certainly not to me, but I think it's really important as a reminder that social media is an extremely valuable tool when it comes to job searching. So we have 35% of millennial recruiters using Instagram to recruit, and it's even higher with technology companies. So millennial recruiters at technology companies, 63% of them are using Instagram to recruit. Then if we're going to look at Facebook and LinkedIn, 77% of recruiters use LinkedIn more than any other platform for their recruitment efforts. So what happens there is they are often recruiting primarily for passive candidates. And by that, I mean candidates that are not actively searching for employment, but have really solid profiles. And so a recruiter will search profiles. They will search, of course, the LinkedIn search engine using recruiter tools. And in their results list, they will get profiles that hit so many keywords or graduates from certain programs and so forth and so on. So 77% of recruiters use LinkedIn for their recruitment efforts. It's pretty high. LinkedIn is pretty high for recruiters to use. Facebook, 63% of recruiters use this platform for recruitment efforts. And of course, if you go on Facebook, you will see that there are job search tools that are available on that particular platform as well. But it is something to keep in mind. Here's the thing. So if you are using, well, if you're using social media, yes, you should do this. But even if you're for your job search, but even if you're not using social media for your job search, in fact, more so if you're not using it, because your guard might be down a little bit. If you're not really thinking about job searching when you're using social media, then your guard might be down and you might be posting things that might not be the best, right? So it's a good idea to audit. So audit your social media accounts, like review them. What have you posted? What's public information? What's private? Remember, even if it's private, if your friends are tagged in it, then their friends could potentially see that information too, so forth and so on. Google your name. Is there an ouch or a yay after that? So everyone should be Googling their name every now and then, especially with, if you're active on social media and you're using your full name on your social media accounts. Familiarize yourself with the privacy settings of each platform. So LinkedIn, for example, there's no phone number that you can call and say, hey, I'm looking for some information. How do I work this new update you guys put in? But there is a privacy and settings tab that I always recommend people take some time. I mean, really take some time, grab a cup of coffee and take some time to peruse this section, because any question pretty much that you have about LinkedIn, the answer is usually found in the privacy and settings. And I suspect it's the same for using Instagram and all those other social media platforms. Identify your brand and check in with yourself. So again, do that audit. Does the image that you're putting out there, does it actually reflect what it is you want to do, right? Does it reflect the image you want to project to companies or to an industry that's out there? Use social media to research people, positions, companies. Again, going back to LinkedIn, if you're searching people's profiles, do it in full you mode, right? So you have the option, and LinkedIn will always default to putting you in full viewing mode. And if you're on LinkedIn, you'll know what I mean by this. You get that update saying so-and-so has viewed your profile, or someone has viewed your profile. So if you're viewing in privacy mode, then there's a couple of things with that. Number one is, those people won't know who you are, and the whole point is to get to know, for people to get to know who you are. And number two, if you view in privacy mode, LinkedIn will not disclose to you who's been viewing your profile. Right? They say, well, if you're viewing in privacy mode, we're not going to tell you who's been viewing your profile. So you kind of lose that bit of information there. So I do encourage people to research people using the full open public setting. Follow people in companies, join groups, and then be proactive in groups. So you can set up, for example, you can set up a Google alert in order to get information about a certain topic or industry or whatever. And as soon as news kind of hits Google, you'll get an alert about that particular topic. And it might be a really huge bit of information, industry changing bit of information. So if you can then post about that, because you're getting it in kind of real time, if you can then post about that, then people within your network are going to be like, wow, that person really seems to be on it. They really seem to be proactive and engaged with what happens in our industry. So join groups and be active, be engaged. Connect and network with people, but don't just connect with them blindly. Connect and tell them why you'd like to connect with them, right? If you take once, give back 3 times. And what I mean by that is, if you've requested an information meeting with someone, or if you put a general question out looking for information or assistance on a certain topic, then give back 3 times. That's kind of my general rule of thumb. And giving back doesn't have to be something uber fantastic. It could be something as simple as liking someone's comment or commenting on someone's post. Ideally, it would be something like doing an connection. So connecting two people in your network that don't know each other. Hey, so and so, you're both in this industry and you have similar backgrounds. I thought maybe it would be great for the two of you to connect and share resources or whatever it might be. So for every time you take, give back 3 times. All right, so again, you want to nurture and keep these kind of relationships going, right? So be an active listener and pick up on what they say. And this goes for both introverted and extroverted people out there. Pay attention to what they say. You could get some really great intel there that will help keep that relationship going, right? So they might have mentioned something about a trip that they took or about, a particular interest or hobby that they have. And this can, you can kind of keep that, store that in the back of your mind. And this could be your way to connect back with them. Like, oh, when we met over at that really great workshop, I remember you talking about this particular, traveling over to India, and I found this really great article about whatever, right? So you can kind of keep it connected that way. The other thing is, remember that question you're going to ask, is there anyone else you would suggest I talk to that can provide me with more information about this industry or this company? Remember that question? It's the last question you want to ask in an information meeting. Well, reach back. If they give you a contact, go back to them and let them know, keep them up to date of what's been going on, right? So, hey, thanks again for connecting me with Bob Smith over in at ABC Corporation. We had this really great meeting and it was really great. He actually told me how the two of you met. And, so just kind of connect back to that original person and keep them in the loop, right? Or thanks again for suggesting so-and-so as a possible mentor. We met, had a cup of coffee, and now, she and I will be meeting monthly. Something along those lines. Keep them in the loop. Reach out sporadically, so that kind of falls in line with what I just said. Just kind of keep them posted, right? So if you had originally reached out to them with information to get information about a particular company or industry, or what courses you should take or whatever it might be, then just give them some updates, or even just check in with them. Hey, I'm just wondering how you doing. Last time we spoke, you were saying that you were, training to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, whatever. How's your training going, right? Again, this is a good rule of thumb, give back. So for every time you take, give back 3 times. And then again, keep them updated, right? Keep them updated, including any referrals that they had provided you. So just to wrap things up a little bit, so we started off with this topic, target companies, not job postings, right? So rather than react to job postings, be proactive, step back, do a little bit of research, analyze what's going on in the market, where you see yourself fitting in that market, and then take steps in order to connect with people within that industry or within that company or whatever it might be. So target companies, it's more fulfilling for you that way. Think outside the box. And if this is your comfort zone, step it up a notch, right? And so, by doing that, take on short-term contracts or jobs that you hadn't really thought of doing. Before you think automatically no, try to think yes. And then go from there. Ask yourself the question, what is the worst that can happen if I try this out? What is the worst thing that can happen? Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend you ask that question if you're going to be skydiving, because we know the answer to that. But when it comes to networking and job searching, the worst thing that can happen is someone will say, no, I don't have time to help you with that, or no, sorry, I don't do that kind of stuff. But what can happen is you can expand your network. And from there, it can go in any direction, right? So actually challenge yourself with those kinds of questions and talk them through. Take some short-term courses. Micro credentials, pretty popular topic right now. Certificates. Coursera is great. Now, of course, I'm saying outside of KPU. Coursera is great, but anytime you can take an in-person class, do that. because it's easier to connect with people that way. Consider mentorship, either being a mentor or being a mentee. Be a connector, so connect people, like pay attention to what's happening around you, and maybe do a connection between two people that are within your network. Be authentic and genuine, so do operate within your comfort zone and then a little bit beyond that. But be authentic, be genuine. Don't just do it to ask people for jobs, right? Do it to connect. And then start now. What better time than right now, right? So just wrap it up with a few things that are right at your fingertips here. So the KPU alumni and 10,000 Coffees, they've done a partnership there. You might already be a part of it, where they do introductions rather between students and alumni, and it is great. I'm actually part of it with UBC. That's my alma mater, and then there's also alumni chapters that I think there's currently about 5 alumni chapters that you can explore them a little bit further here. Now, again, this will be posted to YouTube, so these links will be available there, of course. But they're they're all links available through KPU. You can also connect with the student union because there are student clubs. I think there's currently 36 student clubs, but there's also, if you don't see one that works for you, you can start a club. So why not do that? Why not start a club or join a club? All right, and I will end it there and leave it open for questions.
Awesome. So if anyone has any questions, you can just type them in the chat here, and Chantal can answer them for you. Awesome. So we have a question from Bradley here. What's a good way to keep track of your connections?
Well, LinkedIn is really great for that, first and foremost. But one activity that I used to do with people in workshops is to get them to write down their connections kind of broken up by kind of a topic area. So you can do this in an Excel spreadsheet. You can do it kind of any way you want. You can have like a visual board of how you do it. It's completely up to you. But maybe break it up by school connections, professional connections, volunteering, student clubs, and yeah, so I would suggest maybe writing it down like that, categorizing them. Also, too, if you're actively pursuing connections and you're actively out there, then yeah, having some kind of a table that you refer to that then prompts you with follow-up dates, like, this is where I met this person, primarily this is what we spoke about. This is kind of something you would do in a job search as well, but it's really no different. This is what we spoke about, and this is a good time for me to follow up, or ways, advice this person gave me, and topics to follow up about as well, and dates. So you could do it that way, but of course LinkedIn keeps it nice and neat for you as well. I say audit your LinkedIn every once in a while as well. I have tons of people on my LinkedIn that I haven't kind of reached out to in a while, and I don't even remember how we connected. One rule of thumb is if I haven't connected with you in one form or another, I do not accept any connection requests. Because I do want to be able to use my network. If someone was to reach out to me and say, hey, I noticed you're connected to so-and-so, I want to be able to authentically make that match. So do an audit of your LinkedIn profile as well.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any questions for Chantal? Awesome. If not, just a reminder that this webinar will be posted on our YouTube shortly after this. So, if you kind of forget what Chantal said about a certain topic, you can always refer back to that. And it will be posted on our social media. for you guys to easily access it.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for giving me your lunchtime hour, and hopefully we'll see a few of you tomorrow for the Navigating a Job Fair webinar.